majority of our people within the community can be able to afford. But when you do it accumulatively, you will realize that these media houses are making a kill out of this betting, probably 10 or even 20 million within a day. But the amount of money that they are telling the people that this is the person who won, it is less maybe probably than 100 or 200,000 shillings. There must be law, there must be a regulation. We must come up and call these people out and now start making sure that they are regulated, so that if they declare that they are going to release certain amount of money after paying taxes, after paying the winners, and how they pick up even these winners, Mr. Speaker, is questionable. You realize part of the family members of these cartels, they are the one who probably wins, because there is no way you can be able to verify who is the winner, because they are using the radio station, Mr. Speaker. This has also gone some to an extent even to family breaking up, marriage and families, Mr. Speaker, because probably the man become addicted to betting. Every coin, every shillings that he gets within his means, he normally put it to betting. And we must save our community and our young generations from this betting, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, that's why I want to second this motion and request that the House to also support, so that we can make sure we regulate these media houses, and so that we can make sure that we call out those people who are earning and milking millions and billions of money from Kenyans people without even paying tax, Mr. Speaker. I therefore second this motion.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that, aware that the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act, Cap 131 of the laws of Kenya, provides for the regulation of gambling industry, including the controlling of betting, lotteries and the gaming in the country. Further, aware that there is an emerging trend of media houses offering their audiences platforms to participate in betting through lottery-style games, trivia shows, polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming, concerned that the trend was initially perceived as a harmless form of entertainment and audience engagement, but has since developed into a problem within our communities, leading to many Kenyans getting addicted to this form of gambling, and that has led to lots of loss. Further concerned that there are numerous negative effects of this trend, including financial ruin, family breakups, high truancy in schools resulting in high school dropout rates, and in some cases suicide, noting that these games target individuals who can least afford to lose money, mainly the elderly, the youth, and low-income earners, cognizant that the government has the responsibility of protecting citizens from negative social trends, including gambling, and that the proliferation of these games is a violation of the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act. Now, therefore, this House urges the national government, through the relevant ministries and agencies, to 1, regulate the running of lotteries and any other forms of betting disguised as polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming by media houses, and 2, ensure strict operationalization of the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act and increase control and oversight of the betting industry. The Member of Parliament for Mombasa County, the Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Niweze kupongeza Mheshimiwa Madenge kwa kuleta mjadala huu leo. Kwa hakika kamari imekuwa donda sugu katika taifa hili, na tunasema samaki mkunje angali mbichi. Tukiangalia watoto wetu katika mashule, watoto wameharibika. Hata nyumbani mama utafuta mahala pa kuficha kipochi chake. Manake watoto kufuatia kuona kwenye matelevisheni, kusikia kwenye maredio, kwenye mitandao, watoto wa skuli wameingia na wamezama katika kucheza kamari. Sisi Waislamu katika Qur'ani imekataza na imeharamisha kamari. Na mimi nataka nieleze jumba hili leo kuwa chochote ambacho Mwenyezi Mungu amekichukia, chochote ambacho Mwenyezi Mungu amekikataza, ikiwa taifa itapitisha ama binadamu atafanya, basi madhara yatakayokuja huwa ni makubwa sana. Na mimi napenda kushukuru Mheshimiwa Madenge kwa sababu amefunukiwa na ameona kuwa kamari imekuwa na madhara makubwa katika jamii kuliko faida. Na ningependa kuelezea vyombo vyetu vya habari. Mambo mengi mnatuelezea mazuri, kuna mambo mengi mnatufunza mazuri, tunawapongeza sana. Lakini kwa hili la kamari, tunawaombeni leo tuweze kulipinga kabisa kabisa. Manake utaona kuanzia saa 12 asubuhi mpaka saa 6 usiku ni mambo na masala ya kamari ambayo yanaweza kuonyeshwa kwenye matelevisheni na kusikizwa kwenye maredio. Wazee tena wanaosifika wamezama kwenye kamari mpaka wengine wameuza mashamba, watoto wamekosa urithi. Tukiangalia wanawake wengi sana utawapata hata wamekaa kwa kona, unasikia mimi na bet. Lakini huu ni wizi wa dhahiri kutoka katika hii industry. Ni wizi wa dhahiri kwa sababu wao wanatengeza mamilioni, lakini Wakenya wanaolengwa na kamari ni wale Wakenya wanyonge ambao hali zao ni duni. Pengine ameenda mjengo, leo anaingizwa kwenye kamari, anaona leo nimeshinda shilingi 200, wacha niongezee nitashinda 500. Pengine siku hiyo amepata 10,000 katika mjengo, anaeka yote kwenye kamari, pesa zinaenda zote, wapata mtu ameamua kujitia kitanzi kwa sababu hali si hali katika maisha. Na ingekuwa ni uwezo wangu, na mimi nasema kama kiongozi katika jumba hili, mimi ningeweza kupinga kamari kabisa katika taifa hili. Tusiwe na mambo ya kamari kabisa, iwe kwa mtu mzima, iwe kwa mtoto, yote ina madhara kwa sisi sote. Kwa hiyo ingekuwa ni uwezo wangu, Bwana Spika, mimi ningeweza kukataa kamari kabisa kama vile Mwenyezi Mungu na ninakataa mimi kama Mama Zamzam, kama Muislamu. Ninakataa kwa sababu dini yangu hairuhusu kamari. Na mimi nawaombeni viongozi mlioko hapa, ili jambo tulikataa kabisa. Kuna mambo mengi sana ya kujenga taifa. Mvua imekuja, jamani, hizi pesa zinazochezwa kamari tuziweke kwenye mashamba, tuweze kulima mashamba, tuweze kuvuna chakula, wananchi wanakufa na njaa, tuweze kuwekeza kwa vitu vya maana. Tuache kuingia kwa vitu ambavyo Mwenyezi Mungu amevilahani. Na ukiangalia watoto wa skuli, na mimi nawahusieni na wazazi kule nyumbani, waangalie watoto wao. Hii mambo ya kumpa mtoto simu, mtoto ni mdogo unampa simu, ndio maana anaingia kwenye zile sites ambazo zinamuonyesha wapi atacheza kamari, na huko anaingia katika wizi. Tutakuwa tunaua watoto wetu, lakini hatutibu pale mahali ugonjwa unaanzia. Wizi huanza na mchezo wa kamari, mwisho mtu akaingia akawa jambazi sugu. Kwa hiyo mimi katika taifa hii, mimi naomba na wizara husika. Jamani, kama kuna wizara inahusika na betting, mimi nasikitika sana, kwa sababu ingekuwa ni wizara ambayo iko kinyume na betting, wizara ambayo inakataa betting, wizara ambayo inaangalia wapi kuna chezo kamari, ni kasino, ni pale nyumbani, ni pale kwa TV, sijui ni ile ambao huwa tunaona wapi, ile ambao hata mimi nishawahi kuingia nikiwa mdogo, lakini Mwenyezi Mungu aniswame, ndio hapo nawaambia watoto huwa wanavutwa. Mtoto huwa anavutwa, na hii inakuwa kama vile addiction. Mtoto anashindwa kusoma, mtoto anakuwa amepotea njia, tunapata jamii inaangamia. Kwa hiyo mimi na support na naunga mkono mjadala huu wa leo, na napenda kuambia serikali, hali ya maisha ni ngumu. Tuache mambo ya betting. Zile pesa zinazoingia katika betting, tuangalie tuweza kufanya namna gani sisi tukainua uchumi wa taifa. Stima ikarudi chini, bei ya maji ikarudi chini, bei ya chakula ikarudi chini, kuliko kupoteza pesa kwa vitu ambavyo havina maana. Na mimi naelezea serikali, wakati mwingine waweza kuona unakusanya ushuru, unakusanya hapa na pale, kumbe unachukua laana wewe unaiweka katika taifa yako. Ikiwa Mwenyezi Mungu amekataa kamari, basi ni dhahiri shairi kuwa serikali nayo pia iweze kupinga kamari. Sisi tunasema serikali ipinge kamari kabisa, hizi pesa ziweze kupelekwa kwa mambo ambayo ni ya maendeleo. Na mimi nafuatilia sana, kuna watoto ndani ya Mombasa County wameingia katika kamari. Watoto unawapata badala ya kwenda skuli wamekaa vichochoroni, bagi kwa mgongoni, lakini yuko na simu. Wazazi wangu wa Mombasa County, janga hili la kamari ni janga kubwa, japokuwa halionekani. Leo mtoto atakuletea 500, mimi napata hizi na beti, napata hizi tununue mboga. Wewe mama unapokea, lakini jua unamweka mtoto wako kwenye matatizo. Kesho atafungua kabati lako, atatoa dhahabu zako, atakwenda kuuza ili aweze kupata pesa za kufanya nini? Za kucheza kamari. Kesho kutu atafungua mlango wa jirani, ataangalia kipochi chake, atachukua, ataenda kucheza kamari. Siku inayofuata atakwenda kuvunja bank. Unampata kwenye kasino, manake wale wa kuvunja banki wakishamaliza shughuli zao, huwa wapata kule kwenye kasino watupa pesa kama njugu, manake hawakuzifanyia kazi, hawajui uchungu wa pesa, na yote yatokana na mambo ya kamari. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nafurahi leo kupata mwanya huu wa kuweza kupinga kabisa na kuweza kusupport mjadala wa Mheshimiwa Madenge. Mwenyezi Mungu akuweke Mheshimiwa. Ni katika mijadala ya nguvu sana katika jumba hili leo. Ni katika mjadala mkubwa sana katika taifa hili. Ni donda sugu ambalo lilikuwa limefumbiwa jicho na leo tunaliangazia, na uhakika na nyinyi waheshimiwa wenzangu mutaweza kulitilia pono na tuweze kulipinga ni mambo ya kamari, na hasa katika matelevisheni yetu. Nyinyi ni wazazi mnaotangaza, nyinyi mna watoto, tunawaombeni mambo ya kamari kwanza tuanze kutoa katika vyombo vya habari, kisha tuweze kuimaliza na sehemu nyingine yote. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Thank you very much. Honorable Madenge, Parliament under Article 95 resolves issues of concern to the people. When a motion says, and this I'm raising with all honorable members, that this House urges, what are we resolving? I thought we should, begin crafting these motions in a way that will make the resolutions of Parliament actionable. I mean, when you say the House urges, beyond talking what do we achieve, I think it is something we should look into as we deliberate upon this motion and as we deal with other matters. Is Honorable Musa Sirma in the House? Honorable Joanna Ngeno is certainly not Honorable Musa Sirma. Honorable Farah Malim, former Deputy Speaker, you want to contribute?
Speaker, I want to add my voice into the ills of this habit. The previous speaker was very categorical that this thing, I believe in all faiths, I know in Islamic faith, is banned. It actually says in Arabic, "Rijsun min amal al-shaytan." It is the lowest morals of the devil. The devil is the devil, Lucifer. We know him to have no morals. He destroys humanity. Even within that low moral of the devil, or Lucifer, this is the lowest of the law. We have destroyed generations of this country. And the thing itself is compulsive. If you've ever heard of addiction, the alcohol addiction, the drugs addiction, the cat addiction, this is the most compelling, compulsive addiction. Once somebody gets into this habit, he doesn't know what he's doing. He will sell his properties, he will sell the school fees of his children, he will sell the food. I mean, he will use all those money for no other reason than to do betting or gambling for that matter. We had, in the early days, a way of protecting this because it was confined to casinos. And casinos were presumed to be the places where the rich people go and look for these services. And the government stood to make a little bit of money out of it. But now, because this thing has been liberalized to the extent in which you can bet 10 shillings, it has come to our homes. A country that has, I think, 67% of its own population living below the poverty line. where poverty is so widespread. But the media, we have become so powerfully savvy that we have one of the highest numbers of per capita access to mobile services. Highest, one of the highest. I believe on a per capita basis, maybe the highest in the continent. We have this, our children, and everybody has access to this through the mobile phone. And because that access is there, then all these poor people see somebody who has made 1 million, 2 million shillings by betting 100 shillings or 200 shillings. And because they're living in such an awful, difficult life, that person says, maybe I could try that and make a jackpot. And that's how gambling feeds itself progressively. It continues that way. Eventually, you become addicted to it, and you actually steal to gamble. Not only do you use everything that you had yourself, I remember way back, many, many years back, there was an Indian gambler who had misused the last coin for his family. And you know, Indians have a culture in which the father pays the dowry for the daughter to get married. I think he went and took a loan to get his daughter married. But because he was a compulsive gambler, he went and gambled everything away and could not forgive himself. He chopped off his own right hand. It was in the media those days. So I think what we need now is a very powerful government regulation in this. The school dropouts are there. The low grades are there. The truancy is in so what do you call widespread, that quite often when you're called by somebody who's calling from a school and tells you that he can't pay the fees, ask him to give you the numbers of the parents, his own parents. Maybe the fees was given to the child, but because he has gambled it all away in one way or the other, then they have to look for other places, like, look for CDF. And you get occasionally and ask the parents and tell them how much money was given to this child. You realize that that child is playing games. We end up paying their fees straight to the schools, but nonetheless, this thing has had an effect across the society. Across the society. It is now happening even in villages, in the rural areas, in the very backward rural areas. Backward in the sense that there's no infrastructure, there's very little to show off for purposes of government services and other infrastructures. But still, because they have this smartphone, you find a young person who is in school or in college who has a problem raising 10,000 shillings or 5,000 shillings, even for the fare to get to the institution, even if the CDF had to pay the rest, but has got a smartphone that costs about 60,000, 70,000. And one of the things that is really feeding into these things is this kind of very, very bad behaviors. I also agree with the Speaker very well that Member of Parliament for Nyeri, I think the urging element of it is, in my opinion, I'm sure you're trying to look for us to use this as a way of creating a bill, a process of creating a bill from the House itself that controls this thing. And that's, in my opinion, one area. I'm happy with the way it is, but as the Speaker said, maybe you should have done a bit stronger than that. But nonetheless, don't leave at this stage. Proceed on and make sure that the bill is in place. If you need my assistance or you need the Speaker's assistance, we'll be willing to help you on this, because we really need to bring this country's future generations into certain sanity. This is a country in which, in the past, we used to say, in all societies, that the mothers and the women folk and the female gender in this country are the ones who are carrying the burden of this nation. Because you give a man money and he can use it for Mira, he can use it for drinking. He can use it for whatever he has to use it for. But you give a mother money, she takes it to her children. But if you bring this betting to the mother in the house, and she decides, I'm suffering so hard, but maybe I can put in 100 shillings in here and have a chance of making 1,000,000 shillings. Out of that desire to try and better the lot of her own family, she could easily get sucked into this compulsive behavior. And that also has got a problem. So this thing is, even the safe areas that we had before, our women folk and the mothers of this country were the ones who are holding the families and holding this nation. I can tell you where I come from. 70% of the people taking care of children and sending them to schools are women. Now, if that is going to again be invaded through this, we then have nothing. We then have nothing, because I haven't seen in my lifetime 10 women who chew Mira. And I've seen probably 500,000 people who chew Mira who are men. You probably see women who are drunkards, alcoholics, but they're so minuscule when you compare them to overall numbers. And then you look at all the families and the households here, how they've been taken care of by the female gender. Now you take this into that. This is already also craving or creeping into that. Very few safe zones that we had before. So the whole nation is going to be destroyed, in my opinion. So I think worse than Kumi, worse than Mira, worse than any of those social, ills that we had before, this new phenomena which is imported from outside, by the way, it comes from outside the country, which has come from outside the country. This, we have got to tame it in the soonest possible. Thank you.
What is out of order, Honorable Ndiki?
Mr. Speaker, sorry. I would like to ask my very good friend and senior to give us statistics proving that Mila is a bad substance, because you have demonized Mila in 3 of your statements. Please provide statistical evidence to prove that Mila is entirely, if you misuse something, that does not mean that something is bad.
Yeah, Honorable Farah Malim, were you still contributing or you were done?
I was, no, just before I was done is when. But then, you remember, there was way back, there was a matter that was raised on this floor of the House, in which Martin Shikuku said Kanu is dead, and then Serenoi said there's no need to substantiate the obvious. I say that there's no need to substantiate the obvious, but if you want to see all those body of what you call research that was done, including this thing being banned in all the developed world. Mira is banned in Somalia, in Tanzania, it is banned in Uganda, it is banned in South Sudan, it is banned in all these countries. The only country that is not banned, I can agree with you because you come from a Mira growing zone. But tell me, go back to your own self now in real sense. And Speaker, can I take 1 more minute? 1 minute before I...
You know, the procedures of the House do not allow a member to stand on a point of order to reopen debate for a member who has concluded.
Yes. No, I had
and that is what you are doing with Honorable
I was just before I concluded.
You will have 30 seconds to do so because members want to contribute.
Okay. And it is the all developed world. Go with Mira right now to Saudi Arabia. You'll rot in jail for the rest of your life. It's actually life imprisonment. So Mira is a very bad thing. It has destroyed your own people. Even the Mira growing areas, children don't go to school, and you know that very well. But I know you will get some few votes because of this. But let me tell you one thing.
Farah Malim and Honorable Rindikiri can persuade themselves on those issues beyond this motion. The Honorable Joanna Ngeno, MP for Emwadikir.
The Mira debate is very interesting, Mr. Speaker. I had not known what kind of substance it is, but I was also thinking I could do it as a commercial farming. But now my brother here, the Speaker, who is our senior, has condemned it. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, I wish also to make a contribution of this particular debate And like you've said, there were two motions. This one and another one which was dealing with the electricity, the cost of the electricity, which was actually urging the government. This one also is urging the government. I really wish, if you look at the contributions made by members, especially on that debate, that motion which was dealing with electricity, when you look at the contribution made by members, very substantive, very concrete matters that were discussed in that particular motion. But the unfortunate part of it is that motion will just end up in the shelves of room 7, or how do you call it, table room. Same case with this one. So I really want to take the advice of the Speaker that members, when you look at these very fundamental motions that we bring to the House, which are very fundamental, like this one, let us turn it into a bill. Let us go and rewrite it into a bill so that we use the debate of this House, the contribution by members, to enrich that legal undertaking that we are going to do. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that very serious advice. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, this idea of betting, I remember we did a very serious debate in this House last year in the last Parliament, especially on betting companies, which one of them was even SportPesa. Mr. Speaker, it was a very serious debate, and heads rolled. And I remember very well, Mr. Speaker, that so many betting companies were removed. They were banned. Their licenses were withdrawn. Mr. Speaker, the same reason that we are discussing here today were the same reasons that we used at that particular moment to withdraw licenses of particular betting companies, which were actually destroying our generations. Mr. Speaker, I've heard the Deputy President of this country talking about illicit drinks, which is actually almost removing a whole generation of young men. Mr. Speaker, the same situation is happening with the betting companies, Mr. Speaker. The betting game in this country, Mr. Speaker, is actually also destroying almost a whole generation, Mr. Speaker. Even students who are in school, they don't even, they don't even take time to read anymore. Because their minds, they are waiting for the results, either in the radio, either in TV, either in their phones, whether they have won or not. Mr. Speaker, on personal level, or even on our capacity as members of Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, there has been a lot of demands by these students, either those are in the universities or in colleges or in secondary schools, asking for some money, which, of course, we cannot substantiate. We do not know whether that money goes to school, but they will tell you, today they want this particular amount of money. Today the school wants this particular amount of money. And it's not big money, 500, 1,000, Mr. Speaker. So, but since we have learned that these monies, most of 80% of these monies that we send to these particular students don't go to school. They go to betting. They load in their phones so that they can bet either what is in those particular betting. Mr. Speaker, I count myself lucky because I have never participated in any betting in my life, even when I was young. When people used to go to those cards where somebody is saying which card is for money, e-card in your pesa, or something like that. I resisted to participate in those particular bettings because I knew it was going to attract me to those particular games, which I have always understood has nothing but waste your time, So, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support of the member who introduced this particular motion to this House, that members of the TV stations and the radio stations that participate in betting must, we are not saying we should remove them from those particular things, but they must acquire licenses as betting companies. Just like the ordinary betting companies outside those radio TV stations. They must also acquire licenses so that if they want to participate in betting, They must have the licenses for betting. Number two, they should also pay taxes. Because how much money is actually spent on those particular betting debates or those betting activities? Millions of money, Mr. Speaker. And I believe those particular radio stations or TV stations do not pay taxes on betting. They pay taxes only for the activities of the TV station and the radio station. So, Mr. Speaker, I think these people should be given, if they want to proceed with betting, they should also pay taxes for those particular activities of betting, because that is where millions of money are being processed. And Mr. Speaker, if we want to control these particular betting on TV and radio stations, the taxes should be followed properly and it should be high, so that we avoid destroying a whole generation of young men and women. Number three, Mr. Speaker, they should be registered as betting companies, so that if they want to participate in betting, they should abide by the regulations which are set in the acts of parliament or in law. Because those companies which are in betting right now, most of them have actually closed shop because they don't follow, or whenever they don't follow the regulations, they are closed. Because the regulations are very strict. Because the rules which are being used or which has been set by this House, Mr. Speaker, are so strict that most of them cannot abide by them, and therefore they close shop. We want the radio stations, we want the TV stations also to be registered so that they are bound by the laws which are created in this House, Mr. Speaker, and so that when they make mistakes, Mr. Speaker, they can be punished using the same laws that are used to punish those other betting companies. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support. But my advice is we should regulate as much as possible the betting in this country. There should be a situation, although, Mr. Speaker, you know, most of the betting are done through phones, but there should have been a regulation that whoever, like the casinos that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker, you cannot enter those casinos unless you are above a certain age. That was a very good regulation, Mr. Speaker. But nowadays, people don't go to casinos. They have casinos on their phones. So how do we regulate the participants in this particular betting? Because nowadays, people participate, whether you are 12 years, as long as you have known how to use your father's or your mother's phone or your brother's phone. You can Google, you can do whatever you can do. Mr. Speaker, my mother is over 90 years old, going around 100. But she has a phone. I bought her a phone. I normally send her money and pesa, and also airtime. But she has grandchildren, who when I send her money, after 3 days she tells me, there's no money in my phone. Why, Mr. Speaker? Those grandchildren have accessed the phone. They have a PIN number. They do betting in that phone. You know, Mr. Speaker, how do we regulate so that the young men who are above or who are below either the age of 20 or 25 do not participate in betting? How? Because these TV stations, these radio stations, they just allow access by anybody, whether you are 12 years, whether you are 10 years, whether you're 25 years, they allow access. How do we regulate that? So that is a question for the member who moved this motion. Please go and do research, bring this thing as a bill so that we can save our generations. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dick Maungu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me to give my contributions on this important matter about betting in this country. Mr. Speaker, I will also wish to appreciate my good brother, Dr. Madenge, for a well-thought bill on how we can regulate and maybe bring some order on betting in this country, Mr. Speaker. We have had for a long time betting companies do their business in this country. And these betting companies for long have been regulated by well-structured laws that govern the way they interact. But the mushrooming of some small betting companies, courtesy of the FM stations we have in this country, has resulted to abuse and to some extent, Mr. Speaker, an exposure to a vast majority of our people. The members in this House may not be culprits in this scheme of betting, Mr. Speaker, but betting, just like alcoholism, betting, just like pornography, is very, very addictive, Mr. Speaker. And there's no way, as a country, we can allow the vulnerable people in our country to be exposed, to be used, sometimes to be, they are so much exposed, Mr. Speaker, because these radio stations have a platform through which they interact with their followers, they interact with the citizens. And it is through this platform, Mr. Speaker, that these betting companies have moved on to register. These radio stations have moved on to register betting firms that can easily be accessed, betting firms that can easily be able to induce, especially the young and the vulnerable people. This country suffers from great unemployment level, and the unemployment level is in the ages of 21 years to around 35 years, Mr. Speaker, most of whom are the youth. This group of people are very, very exposed. This group of people, Mr. Speaker, do not have a source of livelihood. They are almost hopeless because they find that they cannot secure stable employment. They cannot be able to secure a stable source of income. And because of the way the radio stations and these betting companies, Mr. Speaker, keep on inducing these people, they give them some false hope that out of this betting, Mr. Speaker, they'll get some money. But the challenge lies whereby some of the people betting are very young people, Mr. Speaker, who end up using their parents' phone, who end up using the phones of their siblings so as to get some money, Mr. Speaker. And it is true, some of these companies give some small tokens to the said members who end up again pumping the same money in drugs, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I stand to support this motion and request that the honorable member can research further and find, one, how do we structure the betting companies and the betting business in this country, because there's no way a radio station can today think of having a betting, being a betting company, having a paybill number which is not even licensed in their name, Mr. Speaker. KRA for some time has been chasing after how to raise money in this country. These people raised a lot of money. I keep on asking how much of this money goes back to the country as tax, Mr. Speaker, because we find that they'll be receiving so much shillings, as little as 20 shillings to 1 million people, Mr. Speaker. That comes to a lot of money. But I'm sure these pay bills which are not registered in the same business, Mr. Speaker, are a source of income to these people, and therefore this money is exempted from taxation, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the good member wish to dig deeper and find how the country benefits, how KRA has been able to net in these people, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that as much as these people are able to collect money, they are equally able to pay for the taxes that come from the same, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the betting age has been capped because a kid as young as 7 years, a kid as young as 10 years, a kid as young as 12 years who can access the phone of the parent, Mr. Speaker, can therefore be able to bet, can therefore place a bet and get some money, Mr. Speaker. We need to control this betting because at that formative age, these kids are not old enough to make independent decisions. These kids are not old enough, Mr. Speaker, to make independent decisions which are sober and upright, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, these radio stations and the betting firms are actually kind of brainwashing this group of people. And therefore, I stand to support this motion and request that, Mr. Speaker, the House stands strong and loud enough to condemn this kind of business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Ikiri Mugambi, the MP for Buri.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion. I want to thank my friend Maina for coming up with this motion, but just like my colleagues have said, there is something that is missing in this motion, in the sense that we need to have an implementation framework within this motion. such that we don't just talk, but we carry it forward for implementation. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues have spoken on the heels of gambling in this country. I had the great opportunity to be in Las Vegas in the month of January. And I saw a completely different world with the different people. But one thing that I picked is they are professional gamblers. And they are also professional gamblers who are addicts. And around all the premises where there is gambling, we always find people who are zombies, drunk, drug addicted, people moving backward instead of moving forward. They don't know the difference between the day and the night. Mr. Speaker, the gambling culture is seriously cropping into our lifestyle. Mr. Speaker, the other day, I came across a policeman. He was gambling while on duty. I walked into his office, and the first thing that he was doing was gambling. So it's something that is seriously coming up into our lives. We all know we have had cases of suicide in this country associated with gambling. There is an emerging trend of petty thieves among our youth, stealing eggs, onions, and small things from their mothers so that they can get some money to buy illicit beer, drug, and bet. Whether we like it or not, this is what is emerging. Mr. Speaker, there is increasing conmanship associated with gambling. And I'm sure many members of Parliament have fallen victim of this petty conmanship, because now people are borrowing 500 shillings so that they can go and do gambling. And this money is borrowed at night, meaning our children leave home and go at night into the gambling opportunity areas. Mr. Speaker, we have heard about broken families because of gambling. It's a serious matter in this country. And Mr. Speaker, I know of girls who have fallen victim of being pregnant after being lured into gambling dens. Mr. Speaker, we are losing homes to bars. We are losing homes to towns. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that this motion has brought forth is the element of tax evasion. And it has also brought forth the failures of the government in terms of registration of companies. That's the office of the AG and registrar of companies. It has fallen, the Kenya Revenue Authority has totally failed in tax correction because they keep on sneezing where members of parliament are doing a small business. But this broad daylight in television stations, in radio stations, yet KLIA cannot go to those people until when members of parliament start making noise. I say this. KLIA has failed this country. Some departments of the government have failed this country. Some ministries have failed this country. We have been seeing people are not paying taxes. Unfortunately, it has now come out very clearly. About 70% of the companies, all the TV stations and radio stations that Mr. Maina has read, they all belong to Loyal Media and Media Max. The big boys in television and radio business. And these are the stations that are at the front of condemning the government for doing certain things irregularly. It's a shame. Loyal media companies,
Honorable
radio stations.
Honorable Rindikiri, I want us to be reminded always of our standing order provisions.
I start getting, Mr.
We
Speaker.
don't make adverse, comments about entities or persons who cannot defend themselves before the floor, unless there is a substantive motion thereon.
Mr. Speaker, I am picking this from the narratives that were given by the mover of the motion. Mr. Speaker, we all know Inoro, Kameme FM, Mero FM. He mentioned them, unless if I should not follow that route, I stand guided, but it was brought forth.
Honorable Rindikiri, the worst you can ever do is to contradict the speaker. Once you are ordered to take a particular line, for good order of the House, let us keep to that. We proceed with the debate substantively.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I did not make it in bad faith. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious issue. Even in business practices, some companies are paying taxes, others are not paying taxes. It is discriminatory in terms of business practices, where some companies are given more due advantage than others. So I join my colleagues to saying that it is a very serious issue. We really need to be sober on this. We are losing a generation. And it's like, Mr. Speaker, we are now fighting alcohol, drugs, our girls' pregnancies. Now we have to come with another one called gambling. Every day there's something new coming to our society. And it's going to be a very serious matter unless we do serious consultation and regulations and controls. This country will end up being like some countries now we are seeing. It's like every day there is issue of murder, shooting, and all that kind of situation. So I want to ask honorable members, if we are to save this country, we must save our young people. We must save our young generation. We must speak this with one voice. Gambling needs to be regulated, and seriously regulated. We have to look at the underlying of the issue associated with gambling, stealing. We have performance of our children in schools, etc., etc. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important motion. We really need to bring a lot of implementation concept into it, and I'm sure Mr. Maina will look at this. I thank you, because through this motion and many others, like the ones that we have been discussing this morning, we will be able to save our future generation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The MP for Kitutu Masaba, the Honorable Cliff Gisairu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And I would like to thank Honorable Madenge for bringing such a motion to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, I will want to stick to the direction Duncan Mathenge
Honorable, that is the Member of Parliament for Migori County. Do approach and enter the House in the manner we do under the standing orders. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope my 45 seconds will be compensated. Honorable Madenge is quite specific on what we need to address here. The betting through the media houses. Mr. Speaker, we need to ask ourselves, what's the role of the media in the society? It's to inform, educate the society. But now the media houses have given themselves a bigger role, which is to create wealth through gambling. The target audience of the media is usually very wide. It reaches every home. It touches the most vulnerable. And they use the most enticing language to make every person listening to feel like a winner. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the regulated firms that do betting, you find that they don't have the same leeway, because if it's sports, the gambling is at the peak over the weekend when the sports activities are taking place. This is not the case with the media houses. For them, it is Monday through Sunday, 5 a.m. to midnight. Every hour, they have a different brand of a promotion they are doing. They camouflage it as a promotion, as a way of trying to support business. But this is usually not the case. How many people win in a month? How many people gambled? Honorable Madenge, I think if this comes to be in a bill, we also need to say, if they are regulated, there has to be the number of hours that any media house should be allowed to conduct this betting activity. Also, there should be a minimum amount that any gambler should use to play. The act of coming that you can bet with 50 shillings makes it so easy and so cheap that everybody thinks he can do it. The problem is, this person does it 10 times in a day. So they never see the impact until it's too late. So there should be, for media houses betting, there should be a minimum amount. If someone sees it's 500, chances are you will have very few participants. But if you make it 50 shillings, you literally have even a class 8 child taking the grandmother's phone and trying their luck. The media should be a mirror of society. They should not be the ones trying to show the youth that it's easy to get rich. The get rich mentality has gotten into our youths. Therefore, you find in the villages, they have the small radios following and knowing that in the next hour is my chance to get rich. But instead, they get poorer every day because the little they had, they gamble it away. The media should help us leaders to try and fix society. And what is going on right now is not exactly that. What are the returns? Does the media declare how much they make from these betting games that they conduct? Mr. Speaker, it needs to be that all media houses, a portion of the benefits they make from this gambling should be donated to corporate social responsibility. Because this is not their core business, so whatever they get should be shared with the society where they got that money from. We should see them building schools with the same name they used on that betting activity. So they should be compelled that whatever they get from these poor and needy people goes back, a good chunk of it goes back to these poor and needy people. We need to see them offering bursaries because no person of means gambles on these radio and TV stations. This is mostly by the most vulnerable of society. And our role as members of parliament, as the representatives of the people, is to ensure we protect these vulnerable people, so that the media, who should be our partner in developing society, does not lose traction and end up exploiting the very people we are supposed to protect. The tax laws should apply. They need to pay tax away from the media revenue earnings, and this should be made public so that it's clear to the poor people that while they gambled 100 shillings, someone at the end of the day made 10 million shillings. That for you to win, the chance is 1 in a million, which simply means you will never win. Once the youth know that the chance of winning is so slim, that the actual chance there is you will never win, then they will not gamble. Instead, they will use that money to start poultry farming. Keep some chicken, do some kitchen garden, and use that money to develop yourself. Thanking Honorable Duncan Mathenge, and we hope that you'll take it a step forward so that we put this into law and make sure that the media play their role towards developing this country and protecting the society from the ills of gambling. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Gisairo. Honorable members, allow me to recognize the presence in the House of pupils from St. Bernard Primary School, Kajiado East in Kajiado County, and students from Kasuye Girls Secondary School, Kibwezi East, Makueni County. The students and the pupils are welcome to the National Assembly to learn. I don't know whether the members of parliament from those areas are in the House, but on behalf of the House, we welcome all the students and the teachers who are present as the future of the Kenyan society as they learn. Thank you very much. Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, the Member of Parliament for Westlands.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this motion. Honorable Speaker, this is a very, very important motion.
Honorable Rene Mayaka, are you on a point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I just want you to also consider gender because you also know a lot about betting. You want to speak. Thank you.
I know you, Honorable Rene, said that following that determination of the Supreme Court, gender of people is no longer known. So I don't know when Honorable Tim Wanyonyi confirmed it does not belong to the gender you imagine. Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, proceed.
Honorable, my gender is known, and I know I subscribe to the original creation, the way God created us, man and woman,
yes,
not the other people who are trying to bring in a third party,
yes,
which does not subscribe to nature.
So Honorable Tim Wanyonyi is an African male adult.
Yes.
And so after he contributes, the other gender will be considered. You may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I represent an urban constituency, and this gambling issue, this betting, Mr. Speaker, is really, really affecting our society. You come these days, Mr. Speaker, they have created small machines, a size of an ATM machine, Mr. Speaker, which are placed in local villages. And you find boys and girls, they sneak in, go and play that thing. There is even no age limit. It is allowed, anybody can play. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we must save this generation from this. This betting, Mr. Speaker, if it's not regulated, is going to create a big, big problem in this society. The current generation, Mr. Speaker, we are witnessing people thinking that hard work is not necessary. You can just go and gamble and win millions of money. And this, Mr. Speaker, is the biggest monster that is consuming our young people. And we must find a way to regulate this so that only licensed betting companies, Mr. Speaker, can do this business, and with strict regulation as to age and the people who can participate, and also the timing of how they do it. Mr. Speaker, you find betting now has gone into areas which are very popular with people, especially sports and other things, Mr. Speaker. So that people now, even football, people don't watch football because they love football. They watch football because they're playing, they're gambling. They are trying to, do something about which team is going to win and what, and on like that, Mr. Speaker. And we have seen this trend is going on, and you have seen many people. If you ask him, even the player of a team that is, he doesn't know anybody, but he is betting on that. So we are just looking, Mr. Speaker, that this issue was even in this House in the last Parliament, and we debated it, and there was the issue of raising taxes so that they can discourage them. But I don't think that is the issue, because even if we raise taxes, these people, they mint a lot of money. And you remember, Mr. Speaker, in the 80s when we hosted all African Games here, there was an American conman who came here and pretended that he was going to bring Michael Jackson and others to come and perform before the games. And he collected millions of shillings, Mr. Speaker, and disappeared in a thin air. That the President Moi had to intervene and bring Franco from DRC Congo to come and save the situation. And this is, Mr. Speaker, we have seen foreigners who come here and pitch tent and do this thing of gambling. I don't know who licenses them, and use our media and all that. They drive it because they pay adverts in the media and all that, Mr. Speaker, so that they entice people, and people put money, and we have seen children who have even used school fees, and even just adults. A grown-up man who has taken a loan and go and start gambling, Mr. Speaker, and they lose and end up losing even their family property. So this is a very serious monster that we must control, and Mr. Speaker, I think this motion is very timely, and we need to follow it up and bring maybe a bill so that we can properly regulate this business in this country. Mr. Speaker, in other countries that are doing these things, they are properly regulated, and you don't see this thing being abused the way it is being done in this country. So I support this motion, and I believe that if we can regulate this thing, then we will be able to manage the affairs that go on, especially in our informal settlement, where people, and they target these people, Mr. Speaker, they target the poor people, because every shilling they have, they want to go and use it in this business. Somebody just imagining that he has 5,000 shillings and he can win 100,000, he can win 20,000. So he just goes and throw the money, and then they end up losing, and it becomes very bad. And this has ended up even ruining families, people committing suicide and on like that, Mr. Speaker. So I support, and I say thank you for giving me a chance to contribute, Mr. Speaker.
Is the MP for Kitui West, the Honorable Edith Nyanza, in the House? If she is saying she should proceed immediately, give her the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and sorry for the inconvenience. Let me take this opportunity to hear my views on this motion. first congratulating the MP for this motion. It has come at the right time. And there was a time I even wanted to ask a question, but now he's put it in the right way by actually getting the facts together and bringing it as a motion. You notice that many radio stations, especially vernacular radio stations, are actually running gaming or betting activities with against the law because they are not licensed and they do not have the requisite licenses to do so. You find that they're actually doing gaming. 80% of their time they're using on gaming and 20% on news. But they're actually licensed to do news and also advertisements and such like things. But most of the time they spend the time gaming. And this one has many Kenyans be victims because what they do is that they try to ask very simple questions and very obvious questions which anyone can answer. And by doing so, by asking such cheap questions, they attract the unsuspecting Kenyans who keep on trying, because especially during this time when we have people who are very desperate, these radio stations are taking advantage of these unsuspecting Kenyans who think that they can make money very quickly through gaming. With our youth, you find that our youth, they need a lot of education, they need a lot of counseling to be told that they will not get rich by getting money quickly, because that is what they are trying to do, because they think they will get money rich very quickly, and therefore they fall prey to these radio stations. So the gaming authorities should move swiftly and save Kenyans by coming up with required regulations, required policy. The government should come up with a required policy so that we protect the unsuspecting Kenyans. So the radio stations are giving false hope, stealing. Actually, this one is daylight, stealing from unsuspecting Kenyans. So I want to address the Kenyans and tell them that to actually stop losing money, to stop losing money through this gaming, because what they are following or what they are doing is actually false. It's not true. There is no money, and it's not easy to get that 100,000 you are being promised by these the radio stations. Just work hard. Use that money for the right kind of use which you wanted to use it for. Don't speculate that you will get money. There is no money, because even the people they are announcing on the radio stations that they have won, if you follow, you will find that actually these are not real people. Maybe they are just their family members. Maybe they are just their friends, and they are just lying that you are going to get a lot of money. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and say that the government should move swiftly to come up with the regulations and the right guidelines to these radio stations. In fact, they should stop this game right away so that we don't have many Kenyans lose their money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support the motion.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Member of Parliament for Kericho County, the Honorable Beatrice Kimei.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the motion that has been raised by Honorable Matenge. I want to appreciate the fact that it has come at the right time when Kenyans are looking for any way possible to get food on their table. any way possible to pay their bills, to pay school fees and all that. And Mr. Speaker, when you talk of betting, gambling, lottery and all that, it is something that personally I don't believe. Being a Christian, I want to quote what the Bible says in 1 Timothy 6:10, that says that the love of money is the root of all evil. This tells us that people would want to have easy money, to get money in a very simple way, in a very easy way, and they're not only getting money, somebody putting 10 shillings, 50 shillings, and they are expecting to get hundreds, millions, and even thousands. Mr. Speaker, this one has a very much negative impact on our society. I have very many examples, Mr. Speaker, back in Kericho. I remember this one of Lotto that came so strongly, and many women left their houses very early in the morning, go and do the same betting, missed it, and then when they get back home, they were beaten. I know of a very close neighbor of mine. I had to go and rescue her. I told the husband, please don't chase her away. She was being chased to her home because of that. I talked with her. She's able to do many other things, but she concentrated on that, losing a lot of money. Some even left their children not to cook for them. Lunchtime is there. They are still very busy betting. And you can imagine the impact of that. One lady, Mr. Speaker, used 20,000 of school fees, I believe, for that. But when she was asked, she said, I lost them. I don't know who came to the house and stole from me. But when we looked at it critically, it was out of this betting, Mr. Speaker. So this has caused a lot of agony among many, and people have not used the God-given opportunities of working in the farms, doing business, and doing empowerment of any form, but instead they look for easy money. To me, I look at it as robbery with no violence. The people who have this business, I don't know how much tax they pay. As much as I'm reading that, and there are regulations that are to be put in place by KRA so that 15% tax on betting. I don't know when implementation of this will be done. And then maybe 20% withhold from the winners. So this one has not taken any form. And I must say that before even we talk of that, we have to look at the social and the economic impact of this. We understand the cost of living is high. We understand that people look for any means of getting money. But now, people have to work for the same. Betting is very addictive, and when people don't gain from it, what happens is that they get depressed, others talk of migraine headache, they are distressed, and all the anxieties or anxiety-related problems come to them. And I would say that this one, the government should, in a serious note, look at how to regulate. We've talked about the stations, radio stations, TV stations, that every day they are advertising on the same. I was in one of the stations some times back, and when I was talking about the youth, how the youth are actually how they have gone astray, I mentioned this betting as one of them, but whoever was in the station looked at me seriously, and then I withdrew because I knew my time will be, I actually knew I will not have time even to conclude whatever I was saying. When I asked later, I was told this is where we get pay, this is where we get something, but I wonder how my tax they pay out of this. So I would actually say that regulations concerning the same should be put in place. And then to add on that, Mr. Speaker, I should also say that school children should not be allowed to do the same. It should be regulated on what time petting starts and for what purpose and how people can do it in a fair way. People call it's a jackpot, and some get a lot of money. As I do say that I'm not in support of the same, I also acknowledge that there are people who have actually benefited from the same. I know of one person who actually got 200 million. Of course, he became a millionaire in a day, but he used the money, I believe, positively. But now, I don't know how much tax he paid out of it, but imagining one person out of millions of Kenyans or hundreds and thousands, only one person benefit from the same. So I would say that as this House, we have to take it seriously, and I request the member who has brought it on the floor to take it into the next level so that it is not only a motion, it can be appeal, and that is how it can gain, it can actually be regulated. Children have dropped out of school. Others have poor performance because of waste of time. I know of children who have also been beaten. Reason, their domestic work has not been done because they go out to do the same. And families have broken. Parents have been stolen from by their children, and others steal from others. So I want to support this motion in a very strong way and say that we should look more into it, and I request the member to go deeper into that and bring it in as a bill, and we will support it. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I'm informed that we have members of Kakamega County Assembly in the Speaker's Gallery. We have the Honorable Silai Shienji, the Honorable James Etabale, the Honorable Amo Iliai, the Honorable Charles Anyona, the Honorable Samuel Segero, the Honorable Zurak Nyongeza, the Honorable Moses Mutundi, the Honorable Boniface Mabuka, the Honorable Donald Okumu, and the Honorable Joel Okwako. On behalf of the National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya and on my own behalf, I welcome you to the National Assembly during this tour of duty. Honorable Dorothy Ikiara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this very, very important motion that has been brought to the House by Honorable Madenge, MP Nyeri Town. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is good to note that this motion is very timely because it's speaking about the ban of media houses from running lottery and prize money competition. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting that the media houses of today, they have lost their primary objective. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, because in the late 80s, 70s, we knew that if it's lunch hour, we would run to the media stations to hear the latest news, what is happening across the country. And thereafter, we would hear the radio stations singing patriot. Every few sentences, there is an interlude of betting, something being brought that people are told, now put 50 shillings and you get 100,000 or whatever amount of money. And in the background, you hear somebody screaming, I have gotten my 100,000. So even if Mama Mboga is preparing to prepare dinner for her children, and she has 100 shillings in her phone, what she'll turn back and do, it is to take the 50 shillings, remove 50, bet, expecting the 100,000, which may never forthcome, and at the end of it all, the children sleep hungry. Mr. Speaker, according to the Communication Authority of Kenya, this country has stations that are mostly ethical. So these messages are communicated in the language that even the Mama Mboga, even the person who does not understand any other language will understand. Mr. Speaker, and instead of these stations talking objectively of things that are happening in the country, they have become a recipe for making our families poorer. Families have become more poorer because they want to get rich quickly and they are enticed to easy money. Mr. Speaker, sir, this has become an economic activity of easy making money from some unscrupulous individuals in this country. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely immoral, it is ungodly, it is not right for somebody to make money out of the vulnerable, the most vulnerable members of the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, these media houses have gone even further. And far from what we are thinking, that it is only the young generation which is affected by this, it is not true. People are taking even their pensions and they end up going to this betting and gambling game. Mr. Speaker, a survey done by the Central Bank and by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it indicates that the elderly people bet 9 times a week. On average, this is much higher than the 41.4 of all the other age groups. And what this tells us, Mr. Speaker, these lotteries and prize money are conducted mostly by the television and radio stations. And vernacular stations, as I had indicated earlier, are the most notorious on this. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, most of the people who even take their pension after falling prey and victims of this, they end up paupers and they go to an early grave. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that this country is contending with a rafter of issues that are affecting our youth very, very negatively. We are talking of drugs, we are talking of beer, we are talking of very many other negative things that our youth have been engaged in. And these vices are so deeply entrenched in our society that they are not going to spare any of us. School-going children, we have heard there are a lot of dropouts. We have heard there is rampant absenteeism in our schools. We know too well that all these cumulate to negative effects in our society. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support this motion, and I wish to say ask Honorable Madenge, let us escalate it at another level so that we don't just talk here, because it is evident that in the year 2021, the Betting and Licensing Board was given a green light to stop this vice, but it seems that they don't have the powers to do that. Mr. Speaker, I support and say these negative social trends in our society must stop. It is us, this House, that has the powers to bring this vice to an end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Parliament for Busia County, the Honorable Catherine Omanya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would love to oppose this motion, because any institution that is legally registered here, if there's anything they are doing illegal, then there can be a way of regulating. I look at our football clubs that lack anybody to hold them, and I find that these betting institutions are the ones that are funding them. Otherwise, we would be killing our talented young men and women who are in these various games out there. Secondly, anything that everybody with common sense has, before they engage in it, they should be mature enough and disciplined enough to go into it. I don't think anybody puts a gun on anyone to go and gamble. Gambling is a choice. It's not a must. It's not a priority of anybody. So it's a choice. If anyone chooses to gamble and maybe one day wake up to be a millionaire, then be it. The thing here is discipline. And also the Bible says it is wrong to be covetous. So if somebody wants to be a millionaire within a second and tries their way out and doesn't get it there, you don't have to point at the person who brought the game. It is the person who went to play the game. So I think there are individuals in this country that are being targeted, because I've had one of our honorable member mention Royal Media and MediaMax. And I thought this thing was a motion that does not have any ill motives behind it. But immediately he mentioned, then I realized that it's not actually the gambling. It's not the betting. It is some personalities in this country that are being targeted. And it's bad manners for anyone to be in power and want to oppress or finish the other, because what you set up might be a trap for you yourself. So we should be very careful. Betting companies pay their taxes. If we must regulate, maybe we can up it a little so that they pay higher, because we see the participants are many across even Africa or the world, and maybe what they give back is what we should be looking into, the auditing. We should be looking into how much do they give back to the country. But we all, as leaders, have a role into looking after our kids, what they are getting into. Many times, I do not sleep until I go through the history of my phone to monitor what my baby or my nephews or nieces have been looking into. So it is just a way of people being very lazy. What will your child be doing betting, and you are there? If they are trying those things, just stop them. So let us not throw punches and escape from our responsibilities as parents and start saying it is this gambling, it is that. And also, I think in the regulations, they would add and say, the way they say it to people who drink, that you engage in it at your own risk or something like that. It's a little warning to it. But do not kill any institutions that are here, that are helping our sports, our games. They are helping in one way or another in charitable activities. We see them helping out. And that is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Phyllis Bartow, the MP for Moiben.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to add my voice on this motion of gambling from Honorable Madenge. Mr. Speaker, gambling also considered as pathological gambling is a situation, is not a bad idea, but the problem comes in when it becomes addictive. And when it becomes an addiction, it is just like any other, it's just like drugs, it's just like alcohol, which the society is trying to fight as per now. For example, the President of Kenya and the Deputy President are leading a team to sensitize, with NACADA, are working out a way of stopping or the use of drugs and the use of illicit brews, which have become rampant in Kenya and which have ruined our young generation, that if we are not careful, we will not have a generation in future as Kenya. That is where the problem is. So if this gambling is not censored, it becomes problematic. Once upon a time, when I used to teach at the university, you would walk to a classroom and find empty lecture rooms because some students are busy gambling. Most of them wasted away the fee they were given by their parents. Most of them sold everything, sold their college earthly possessions for the sake of gambling. We saw parents coming to the graduation, hoping that their kids were supposed to be in the graduation list, but they have dropped out, they have not been able to pay fees, they have never been to classes because they were gambling. When gambling becomes an addiction, that is where the problem comes about. We have had cases of Fulisa. Young people, you find them having more than 20 SIM cards because they are getting money, getting small loans from Fulisa to gamble. Isn't that a problem? So my take is, this gambling has to be regulated before it escalates to become an addiction, and more so to young people. When they start participating in this game, they lose concentration. They don't, others drop out of school. Others become petty thieves because they want to get little money. We've heard of stories of young people taking money from their parents' phones, and many other stories which are not very good for our society. Mr. Speaker, I would say that if this business is regulated, it is not enough to tax them, because taxation is going to, if we tax, it's like we are legitimizing the business anyway. We have to regulate them so that we censor and make sure those people who participate, they give an age gap, for example, of those who are supposed to participate in the gambling. And we bring clear regulations on how the game should be done. Otherwise, I'm also a member of parliament who has a rural constituency and urban. And you'll find that in the urban side of my constituency, there are so many gambling centers. People are reaping from very young people. We've had relationships breaking because the money, which is supposed to be for families, have been diverted to do other things like gambling. So what my take is, this motion is a very good motion. we should look at it critically and ensure we only delete what is not relevant, what is destructive, but we leave the business, we give the, we press the regulator to get a bit serious and not just regulate anybody, not just give a license anyone because they want to be in business, because they want to make money. Just like those the organizations which are regulating these, those who regulate the supply of alcohol and drugs in our society, we'll find that some county governments are very fast in giving businesses licenses, regardless of what kind of alcohol or what kind of alcohol they are selling. Some just get a license and they go ahead to do illicit brews, and that eventually people get addicted and becomes problematic. So I think we should lump all of them and work closely to see which one is a good business and which one is not. If measures are put in place, I think everybody will be happy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Irene Mayaka, nominated MP.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Dan for bringing this motion. And I just want to give a different angle of what we need to look at in this particular motion. Because, Honorable Speaker, anything in this world that has an illicit tag to it becomes automatically sweet for people to want to go for it. Be it prostitution, be it alcohol, be it betting, anything that has that tag. So what we need to do, in essence, is, for as long as this
Did you say, what did you say is illicit? Constitution, or what did I hear you say?
There's a P in front. I said prostitution.
Oh, prostitution.
Speaker. Yes.
Okay.
So what I want the approach I want us to take is that in formulating these regulations, we have to have a give and take approach in it. And the reason why I say that, and just to add to what my sister has said, is that some of these betting companies have really supported our sports. Yeah? Just the other day, Harambee Starlets were in training for a whole month, and they could not even go and attend a friendly against Albania because they did not have sufficient funds. But if you look at some of the betting companies, like for example, Mozart supports Homeboys FC, Betika supports Police FC and AFC, SportPesa supports Moranga and Gor Mahia. We have sports companies and clubs that are actually suffering right now, and we have to raise funds on a weekly basis, like Shabana from back at home, who are doing extremely well, but they don't have anyone to support because the government doesn't have enough sufficient funds to support our sports. So what we also need to do in our regulations is to look at a way that ensures that some of these betting companies that are actually supporting our sports, that are gaining revenue from it and supporting our sports, how are we also supporting them just to encourage them as well? Because regulation is good, yes, but at the same time, it has to be a regulation that also seeks to find out how are we also giving back. Because when we create laws in this country, they have to be laws that also encourage investment and revenue earning. Number two, the media companies. Because a lot of media companies, when you look at it right now, Honorable Speaker, be it FM stations or TV stations, they've gone into that space. Why? Because a lot of people are no longer doing advertisements on media. People don't have money. We are living in extremely difficult times. So for media houses, they found that this is one way that they can actually use to raise revenue for themselves. So what these regulations need to do is to ensure, because I am certain that every media company in this country has a legal office attached to it, is to ensure that the legal fraternities and departments in these radio stations and TV stations are making sure that the laws that we have in place are properly put in place to ensure that they also protect the consumers of this. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the Sports Amendment Bill of 2018, and in particular Section 12, 1, 2 of A and B, it actually states very clearly that proceeds of any sports lottery taxes levied on betting companies should ideally go to the sports fund, so that then the sports fund can assist to make sure that the different teams that we have in this country are supported. The question we should be asking ourselves is this really happening? Has KRA given audit records to the sports committee to ensure that this actually happens? And I saw the sports chair here, Mr. Chair, and I really wanted him to listen to this, because this is another angle that we should be looking at. So when we're reading both acts, the Lottery and Betting Act and the Sports Act, we need to make sure that it covers ground sufficiently so that it helps this country. Mr. Speaker, one of the games that earned this, the sports Gor Mahia the highest source of revenue was a game that they played against Everton in May of 2019. And that particular game was a full stadium in Kasarani. I remember I was in attendance. That particular game, through SportsPesa, who did extreme marketing online, on social media, on radio, on TV, was full capacity. And full capacity because it ensured that people paid for the game, people put a bet to either support Everton or Gor Mahia, and because of that, the team was able to actually pay allowances for its players and coaches, and they were able to actually serve the sports fraternity. So what I want us to do is, let's not only look at the bad side of gambling, because for as much as we can sit here all day and say that we want people to stop gambling, we want people to stop putting money in gambling, there's nothing we can do about it. People will still go out there and gamble. People will still go out there and put money into these betting companies. What we need to do is make sure, are we milking enough from these different companies to ensure that the government also has an extra source of revenue to support some of these facilities that they cannot support. Right now in this country, Honorable Speaker, we don't even have medical insurance for our sporting men and women. We have sporting men and women out there who have retired prematurely because they're not able to get proper medical facility. So let's not come out and injure the people who are at least trying their best to assist in whichever way that they can to make sure that this continues, even as we go out to seek solutions. So, Honorable Speaker, I just want to encourage my colleague Dan, Honorable Dan from Nyeri, and tell him that as we are looking at the regulations that we want to take care of, let's make sure that we are also protecting our people from the same. And personally, because one of the reasons I said when I came into this parliament was that I will always look out for sports funds and sports players, because sports bring people together. So Honorable Dan, together with the committee that is going to work on this, let's look at other ways. Let's even go into public participation and see how Wananchi can also give us ideas on how we can enhance this and make it better for our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I arise to support the motion that gambling should be regulated in this country. Mr. Speaker, if we look at the vices vis-a-vis the advantages of gambling in this country, you will realize that the effect of the gambling on the negative are so immense. And this is the reason as to why we should make sure that gambling or betting in this country is regulated in a manner that it is not so disadvantageous to the young men and women who are mostly vulnerable due to the rampant effect of gambling. Today, Mr. Speaker, young families are unbreaking due to mistrust related to gambling, whereby either the wife or the husband is immensely indulged in gambling. So many Kenyans, particularly the young ones, are greatly impoverished due to gambling. the insatiable lust, the insatiable need for money have made so many young people to think that by doing betting, they will be millionaires in a fortnight. This is the wrong notion. This is the wrong thinking that has made people to suffer due to gambling. The mostly affected sector is the education sector, Mr. Speaker. Today, most of the students from the university are dropping out of school because they are deeply indulged in gambling. And this is the high time this owner of house should get ways and measures to make sure that we contain betting in this country for the posterity of our young generation. So many vulnerable school-going kids, due to the negative publicity that is done by the media houses, it very sweet ones, very enticing ones, make them think that if you indulge in betting, by a day or so, or by a month, you will be a millionaire in this country. Just a few who has benefited from this, as it has been alluded, you will hear very sweet ones, music, to make sure that the listeners are made to move to this kind of business, which is not rewarding at all, as many people may think. So what we are saying is that one is also a kind of drug that is killing, that is eating to our society that needs to be very productive. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I'm calling the mover on Duncan to go ahead and have it as a bill so that we can discuss it and see the mechanisms, the best way possible we can make sure that we suppress this growing kind of habit that might eat onto our very, very useful sector of our society if not clearly averted. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I am saying the narrative that's being peddled by these houses to make sure that this kind of business derives for their benefit is not helping the young Kenyans and even the people who are greatly indulged in it. Today, even the football that we talk about, you hear fans talking about Goma here, talking about others, and mainly the international players, whenever you hear them making noise, whenever they are saying we are supporting Arsenal, we are supporting Manchester, there is that element of gambling. And this is the reason as to why we are saying, as a country, we must get the mechanism and ways to regulate this growing kind of menace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, there will be 55 minutes remaining before debate of this motion concludes. I'm grateful there is a lot of interest in the motion. I saw Honorable Dan Wanyama, the chair in charge of sports. I don't know why he stepped out. But the next time we'll sit over this matter, we'll have that time to contribute. And I want to thank the members for being very patient. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, at the time being 1:00 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, the 12th day of April 2023 at 2:30 p.m.